Why are you so hot? You're just on fire.
What's up everyone, it's your boy Charles, and after 2 exciting days of Smash Brothers Switch videos, I'm back again with a video about the Nintendo Switch, talking about how in 2017 and the first couple months of 2018 it just rocked our socks off. That's right, as you know, it's been just over a year since the Switch hit the market, and wow, what a year it has been. And while there are definitely a few things that Nintendo could have done a bit better with the Switch to date, generally, it's been a wonderful, wonderful success for the company, and I will talk about the stinks in another video, but for this video, it's just going to be an overwhelming wall of positivity, because I'm going to focus this discussion on 5 reasons why the Switch rocked in its first year on market. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was system sales, because it has been a runaway success financially, and I know this is more a symptom of the many awesome things that make the Switch tick, but it's worth mentioning because on the sales front, it's made a lot of big accomplishments, broke a lot of records. For example, in Japan, it outstripped the PS2 as the fastest selling console of all time. In the US, it also took the title of the fastest selling console of all time, pushing something like 4.8 million units in the first 10 months, which is pretty crazy. And beyond that, what else has the Switch accomplished? Well, it has pushed past the Wii U's 4-year lifetime sales, which is a big milestone, and beyond that, it is well positioned to match or perhaps even surpass the Wii in terms of sales. For reference, the Wii sold 101 million units during its reign of dominance. And the sick thing about the Switch that gives it so much potential is that while with most home consoles you have one per home, the Switch is something that really you can sell to every person in the home, because it is, in many ways, more of a portable system than a home console. And Nintendo has realized this, and boy, watch as they tap into that. I'm going to talk more about this in a future video where I think they're going to take this and maximize the sales potential, but we'll talk about that another day. For now, just know that this is not just a cool thing from a kind of gross hardware sales perspective. It actually benefits gamers a lot, because the bigger the install base, the more third-party developers are enticed to come and produce games for the system, the more money Nintendo has to bring awesome first-party content. So yeah, I hope that they just tap into this and sell, and you know, every household has 2 to 3 Switches lurking in, because that sounds like a pretty beautiful world. So investors are also really confident in the Switch. The stock price at Nintendo has basically doubled and has approached what you would see with the Wii back in 2007. It hasn't quite touched that, but man, it's really soared since the release of the Switch. And while on the topic of sales, I just wanted to mention that the sick thing about the Switch is that they're selling every single unit at a pretty tidy profit. Basically what that means is that the price you buy your Switch at is quite a bit higher than the price it costs to produce, which is pretty fantastic. Just for reference, a lot of game consoles, they tend to sell the hardware at a loss around launch in order to pump up the install base and then make the money back on software and then make a profit on the systems later on in their life cycle as the component costs decrease. But the Switch is coming out the gate making a profit, pretty sick. The Wii U and the 3DS, interestingly, usually Nintendo sells their systems at a profit, but the Wii U and the 3DS, these were sold at a loss. And as we know with the Wii U, that was just a real stink fest and totally flopped for Nintendo. But the 3DS, of course, they did eventually make that profitable, and it was a big success. But you may remember how damn expensive the 3DS was at launch, and that's because actually it was really expensive to make, and Nintendo wanted to turn a profit on it, but consumers reacted so negatively that they had to cut the price by what? It was about $100. It was pretty crazy, and they ended up selling it for loss just to increase the install base. But yeah, the Wii U was sold at a loss, and it was just loss in every regard for Nintendo. The 3DS, they sold at a loss and eventually came back and became a big success. Nintendo Switch, selling at a profit out the gate, and there's actually a Japanese product teardown firm, people who kind of almost reverse engineer products to see how much they cost to make. A firm in Japan called Formal Hot's Techno Solutions, and they estimated that Nintendo, based on an MSRP, a manufacturer's suggested retail price, they estimated that at Nintendo's MSRP of $299 US, they're pulling in a profit of $42 on every Switch sold. That's pretty sick, and you can bet that that profit margin is going to increase even more once they manage to cut the price of the components used in the Switch. Pretty sick stuff. I don't want to bore you guys by getting lost in the numbers anymore, but I just want to say that, damn. Nice work, boys. Anyways, let's move on to number 2. So the number 2 reason why the Switch absolutely rocked in 2017 was that the marketing was just on point. As you may know, the Wii U marketing campaign was an absolute disaster from the very beginning. People just did not know what this thing was. I think a lot of consumers actually believed it was just a kind of add-on tablet that you could use with your Wii. They totally didn't get the fact that it was a brand new system with brand new capabilities. It was just horribly marketed. I think a lot of that comes down to the absolutely stupid, quite frankly, stupid choice to name it Wii U. I know they wanted to ride on the success of the Wii, but it would just put the nail in the coffin from the very beginning from a marketing standpoint, let alone the other problems with the console, but we're not going to talk about that. But by comparison, the Nintendo Switch has just been blazing on the marketing front from the very beginning, and we can attribute this in part to the fact that the kind of functionality of the system and the coolness of it is so apparent in the design. You see it and you just understand, oh, Nintendo Switch, you know, I can take this, attach it to a dock, and it plays on my TV, pull it out, it goes portable, boom. But, you know, there's more subtle things that make the system rock, like the Joy-Cons and everything, and this is something Nintendo is really focused on in their marketing. Every piece of promotional material you see for the Nintendo Switch is something that shows its various varieties of gameplay and how the Nintendo Switch can appeal to all kinds of demographics. They've done a totally brilliant job with it, and you may recall that they even they ran their very first Super Bowl ad ever with the Nintendo Switch campaign they did last year, and that was a big first for the company. There's no better stage than the Super Bowl in the US if you want to hit a big chunk of the population with a pretty sick ad, which they did. And beyond that, apart from just having really great marketing creative, they also ran a kind of guerrilla marketing campaign. They just did so many different kinds of events where people could go and test out the Switch and see what it's all about. They were really aggressive about that, and that really helped people understand what the system was all about, compared to something like the Wii U where people just, they didn't get it. The only other thing I wanted to mention about the marketing was that it was pretty cool how they made Breath of the Wild such a big focus of the marketing around the Switch. And I think they did that for a couple of reasons. One is that you take a franchise like Zelda, you show this big evolution for the series, and it really pulls in the old guard, people who were playing Zelda since they were young. And at the same time, this whole open world thing, these sexy graphics, this whole new kind of Zelda ecosystem, in a sense, was probably something that really just struck the younger demographic too, and brought in all kinds of new players, I hope. So yeah, I love that they made Zelda such a big focus of all the marketing materials, because it was a brilliant game and it served its function very well. So number 3 on my list is the Switch is not region locked. Thank God, because I think that region locking is such a big bag of bullshit. It's so annoying, especially for portable system. Looking at you, 3DS. I know when I bounced to Canada in 2012, I had to sell my Japanese 3DS because, you know, it's locked, and so I couldn't play any games that could be bought in Canada on it, so what was the point of even having it? It seemed just ridiculous, and I was pretty pissed that I had to sell it because I loved my 3DS. I bought another Japanese 3DS since then, since I moved back, but I just thought that was so silly to lock a portable system, especially considering that the Nintendo DS and the old Game Boys were not region locked. I don't know why they did that, but yeah, Nintendo Switch, thank goodness they sorted this goofy stuff out and made it so it's region free. I know in Japan, trying to get a Switch was damn impossible last year, so by the time October rolled around and it was still sold out everywhere, I went on a trip to Canada and I actually bought my Nintendo Switch in Canada because I realized, oh, this is not region locked, so I can buy it here, play some sexy Breath of the Wild in English, and then take it back to Japan and buy my games here. Great stuff, really meaningful for people who travel a lot, and great for people who like to import games as well. Because, you know, sometimes we get some Japanese games that aren't available overseas that you want to import, and sometimes vice versa too. Believe it or not, there are quite a few games that don't make it to Japan, which is probably a good topic for another video. Did you know that that sweet game for N64, Rocket Robot on Wheels, never made it to Japan? Quite disappointing. Anyways, I just wanted to say that keeping the Switch region free was a big move, and for me personally meant a lot because I like traveling, I like being able to expand my collection wherever I go. Number 4, a return to the glory of local multiplayer. The other consoles have really jumped into the world of online multiplayer, and that's great and all, but wow, it pissed me off how so many games in the past few years have cut split screen multiplayer altogether and made it an online multiplayer only experience. That totally sucks because nothing beats the joy of fragging or smashing your buddies in your, that sounds pretty dirty, fragging or smashing your buddies in the living room where you can talk trash in person and just have a good old time. The move towards online only multiplayer just totally hamstringed the way that I like to enjoy my games, but fortunately the Switch has rolled back the clock or moved laterally or whatever we want to say and brought this kind of personal connection that's associated with the local multiplayer back into the mix, and just made a really nice environment for people to enjoy games with their friends in the same room or at the mall, in the park, wherever, because it's portable. So I'm very thankful for that, and now I just need more actual friends so I can play with them. Friends! It's just so nifty how there's so much cool functionality built into the multiplayer experience on the Switch, how you can kind of separate the Joy-Cons and use them as 2 separate controllers for multiplayer, how you can enjoy multiplayer anywhere on a reasonably sized screen. I see kids here all the time gathered at the park watching someone play, or 2 people or more having at it in Splatoon 2 while their friends are gathered around watching. What a really nice environment that is. And can you imagine how sick it's going to be when Super Smash Bros. Switch launches? Holy smokes, I'm probably gonna head to the park too and whip some kids' asses at Smash Bros. It's probably better if I make some friends closer to my age, but once that game comes out, Charles is gonna be heading to the park too and just opening a big old can of whoop ass on everyone. And of course, the design of the games themselves are really well suited for this kind of local multiplayer, but I think it really is the portability that adds the extra oomph. So you see Nintendo, I don't know how things are going in the Americas or Europe or other markets, but really, I think you're seeing the Switch take the place of the 3DS here as the go-to portable system, as you'd expect, and probably as will continue as the price comes down and they make a smaller Switch, which I think they will. But anyways, that's a topic for a different day. It's just really cool seeing that take place. And the only thing that's different from the 3DS is that you see a lot more kind of screen sharing, and compared to, I feel like 3DS, a lot of people were kind of playing on their own device, maybe in the same space, but it just seems like the Switch promotes more of an interactive play style, especially when you get people going at it in Mario Kart or Splatoon or whatever. Really nice to see, I love it. And while we're on the note of the portability of the Switch, I just want to mention the kind of core idea behind the Switch, that you can use it as a home console system, use it as a portable system, is just so brilliant, especially for someone as fickle as me. You know, maybe the morning is kind of cloudy and I want to just stay inside, I can play on my TV, but as soon as the sun comes out, I can just whip outside with my Switch, pull it out of the dock, and just run into the forest and continue my Zelda adventures there, surrounded by beautiful nature, in-game and out-of-game. Really great stuff. So we've hit 4 to 5 of the things I wanted to talk about: the system sales, the marketing, the fact that the Switch is region-free, and also the fact that it's kind of brought a return to glory for local multiplayer. And the last thing I want to mention, which is the most important driver behind all of the success here, I think, is the games. First of all, we gotta mention Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey. These games are just in a different league. You don't get aggregated Metacritic scores of 97 without just being totally sick. And wow, these games have done a lot in just bringing smiles to people's faces this year, and a lot for the sales of the Switch. Breath of the Wild in particular was just absolutely disgusting in the early months of the Switch in terms of its attachment rate. There was a period of time where the sales of Breath of the Wild actually outstripped the sales of the Switch itself. I think in the first couple months, The Switch sold something like 2.74 million units, but Breath of the Wild actually sold 2.76 million units. And that's worldwide sales. And in the US, you saw this trend reflected as well, where I think the Switch had shifted 906,000 units, but Breath of the Wild had actually shipped something like 925,000 units. That's pretty crazy. And there's some kind of potential explanations behind this. Nintendo kind of posited the notion that maybe a lot of players purchased one copy of Breath of the Wild to play, and then they also purchased, the special edition or the master edition to add to their sexy Zelda collection. Either way, those are some pretty crazy numbers. You don't usually see above 1-to-1 attachment ratio for games to consoles. That's pretty crazy. That means every single person who bought a Nintendo Switch bought Breath of the Wild. That's fucked up. And that was actually just in the first month until March 31st. So that's pretty crazy in terms of units sold altogether, and just the fact that people were so horny for Breath of the Wild. And of course, as the number of Switches in the market increased, that attachment rate leveled off to something like 55%, but that's still pretty crazy. That means 1 in 2 people with a Switch own Breath of the Wild. Pretty nuts. So Breath of the Wild, just an incredible game, runaway success, fastest selling Zelda game ever made, and this is a good opportunity to lead into my discussion of Super Mario Odyssey, because it was also the fastest selling Mario game ever made in its first week. Less than the first, when it wasn't even on sale for like a week. When it wasn't even, sometimes I just try and get my thoughts together and I just get all messed up. But what I wanted to say there was that within the first week of being on market, Super Mario Odyssey pushed 2 million units or more. And by the end of 2017, it had pushed 9 million units. For comparison, Breath of the Wild had pushed 6 million units. These are pretty damn crazy numbers relative to the number of Switches on the market. So I think Breath of the Wild ended up with an attachment rate of something like, like I said, 55%, and Super Mario Odyssey was at about 60% or so. Pretty nice. And there's a lot of other good games that came out on the Switch. Obviously, I just wanted to single these 2 out because they were kind of record breakers within their own franchise, and they also made a huge difference in Switch sales in that first year. It was pretty incredible. And it's pretty sweet that we had both a Zelda and a Mario game come out within the first year for the Switch. It's been generations and generations since that has happened. And damn, what a sick first year. But those 2 juggernauts aside, of course, there were lots of other really fantastic games, whether it was the surprising mashup with some involving some certain Ubisoft characters and Mario. That was a really good game. We had Splatoon 2. There was Mario Kart Deluxe, which sold really, really, really well. There was just so many great first-party and third-party games released on the Switch. It was just nuts. And Nintendo really made a big effort with the Switch to cultivate a bigger third-party presence early on than they did with the Wii U, and it really paid off. And of course, a lot of companies were a bit reluctant at first, but once they started to see the Switch's early successes, a lot of companies ramped up production on their games. So I think, if you consider maybe an average development cycle of 2 years, 2019 is going to be a crazy year for the Switch. That's my prediction. But this video is a retrospective on the past year. That's a topic for a different day. And I just want to say, damn, what a great year for the Nintendo Switch. I think at the time of recording this video, there must be something around 80 physical game cards on the market, and like 350 plus digital only games. Pretty damn considerable numbers there, and there's plenty to play. And the last thing I just want to mention about the games is that they've really done a great job getting the indie devs on their side. Around the time that the Wii U was in its twilight years, Nintendo of America in particular was approaching all kinds of indie developers to try and get them on board. Devolver Digital, Team 17, a bunch of others. Basically, Nintendo wanted to make the Switch a very indie-friendly system from the get-go, and they've made a lot of strides towards that. If you want to buy a dev kit for the Nintendo Switch, it's only something like $450, which is quite a bit cheaper than competitors' dev kits. Once you get your game up and running on the Switch, it's free and fast to push out patches and updates, and beyond that, they're actually doing a lot to help indie developers market their games. In fact, they've kind of pulled the indie experience into their central marketing campaigns, and they use, they promote the indies and they also use the indie games to promote the Switch. It's a really nice situation. And of course, they do carefully curate what makes it onto the system, but would you rather see that, or would you rather see, would you rather be wading through a cesspool of shitty games like on I think I'll take the Nintendo Switch approach any day. Okay? Perception, Jackbox Games, Stardew Valley, Celeste, so much cool stuff, Golf Story, so much cool stuff has come out on the indie scene for Nintendo Switch, and you can bet that the coming years are going to be good as well. Alright guys, this video might end up being a bit long, but those were the 5 things I wanted to talk about that totally rocked for the Switch in its first year. And the future of the Switch is a topic that is very interesting and a topic that I will address in a future video, but today was just a retrospective to show, these are some of the cool things that the Switch pulled off in its first year, and what a smashing success it has been. What do you think about the Switch? Let me know in the comments. Do you love it? Hate it? Did you enjoy the games that came out this year? What are you looking forward to? Drop me a comment. Thank you so much as always for watching, and we will talk again in the near future. Bye for now.